Welcome to ADHD Power Tools, where we give you the tools to unlock the power within. Hello, Brooke. Today I want to talk to you about medication. I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on ADHD medication?
Great question. So, a lot of people come to me and say, I'm thinking about putting my child on medication, or I'm thinking about being on medication. So, I want to just share that I have nothing but positive thoughts about medication. I think to treat ADHD, there's the behavioral approach, which
Mm-hmm.
is what I do as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
and it can also be done in CBT, DBT, or in therapy. And then there's also the medical approach. So the medication creates this chemical response in the brain that behavioral type of therapy or coaching doesn't quite do.
Mm-hmm.
So, for someone who's newly diagnosed with ADHD, it's really up to them which path they want to choose to begin with. Some people decide they want to start a behavioral approach and get systems and tools in their toolbox. And some people think that medication is the best path for them at first. And some people do both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So they all have different effects on treating ADHD symptoms. Medication does have this response in the brain that's connecting the neurotransmitters. So think of a plug that you plug into the wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's unplugged, there's going to be no electricity flowing, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing that the medication does for neurons in the brain. It
Mm-hmm.
helps connect the synapses, and the neurotransmitters are now talking to each other and sending messages to help act, to help focus, to help increase motivation. So it's creating this response in someone with ADHD that is helping them in a chemical way with their executive functions.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. And medication, from my experiences, I've been through a lot. Since I was diagnosed with ADHD at 7 years old. Um, I went through therapy, 6 months of therapy, one-on-one with a therapist, and that helped. But then medication was another option, and my mother decided, yes, let's do it, and they tried multiple on me, from Adderall, Ritalin, Concerta. Those are some of the few they tried on me, and Concerta was the one that stuck. Um, I took Concerta from age 7 all the way to sophomore year high school, which is like 15 years old. I only took it on school days, no other days. If it wasn't school, I wouldn't take it. Field trip, I wouldn't take it, but school days I would. And I did feel a difference. I felt the difference. I felt more, I sat in my seat and focused, and wasn't distracted, and was in the zone. And I did feel the side effects. There are side effects. The loss of appetite, being a little less social. It's the truth. That was the part of it all. That was a negative side of it all. But my tools, my advice on medication is, I took it for a long time. I took it for 8 years, and nothing really bad happened to me in the end. I have only positive opinions on it, as long as you take it in moderation, as long as you don't go too far or abuse it or become addicted to it. Know your limits. That's my advice on the medication. It does, like you said, the chemicals, the neurotransmitters, and the synapses. It rearranges those and activates different part of your brains. That us with ADHD, the dopamine and norepinephrine are firing nonstop. It just calms that down a little bit.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I could tell a difference when I take it versus not. I take it when I need to. At this point in my life, it's been, now I'm a senior in FAU. I take it really when I need to. Say I have like 3 exams on the same day, I'll take it the day before. And there's no shame in taking it whatsoever. It helps when it needs to help. I make sure it's all moderate, and I make sure I don't overdo it. And I know my limits, and I know what's going to help. if I didn't eat the whole day on it, I make sure I replenish myself with those nutrients I missed out on.
Yes, yes.
Think
You have so many good points.
And sleep as well. It's hard to sleep on that as well. I make sure I sleep. I make sure I make up all the sleep, things like that. It's like make sure you build these adaptive skills to it in moderation. Take it when you need to. Don't take it when you don't have to. And yeah.
So I think you bring up a lot of great points.
Hmm.
So important while you're taking the medication to be treated and seen by a medical professional.
Hmm.
So a psychiatrist, there are other specialists out there that can monitor your medication, but when especially when you're starting, it's so important to understand what dosage is correct. What symptoms are you trying to treat? Like, what's the goal of getting on the medication? Because you can measure your executive functions based on the goal of the medication. Like, is it
Hmm.
helping with your working memory? Is it helping? So,
Hmm.
what are you trying to achieve? And then, especially when you're starting off, you might not be able to find the right medication for you in the first 2 years.
Hmm.
So, a lot of psychiatrists start off with a very small dose of methylphenidate, especially for
Hmm.
children. And then they increase it over time as a child is no longer experiencing the positive effects of it and the concentration. And a lot of people have asked me, what do you just keep increasing it? And then what happens, when you max out? Well, if you max out, that means that that's not the right medication for you. So
Hmm.
there's all different types of medications out there to help with your ADHD symptoms. So there's
Hmm.
stimulants. Stimulants happen to be studied as having the most positive effects on treating
Hmm.
ADHD symptoms. Then there's non-stimulants that some people need to take because of heart conditions and so on and so forth. So it's really, really important that you are, being treated with the right medical professional and you're getting the work done that you need. Perhaps you do need, an echocardiogram or something to make
Hmm.
sure that you're even okay taking medication. And then after the 2 years, there are that small 10 to 20% of people who don't have any effects from
Hmm.
ADHD medication.
Hmm.
So there are people out there that do not impact and do not benefit from ADHD medication, but you don't know unless, of course, you go through the phases and experience it. So,
Exactly, exactly. Speaking of, obviously being in contact with your doctor, always getting checkups. Do you need, do you not? That's what happens when you come back and you need another prescription. I was always checked up by my doctor. Methylphenidate, for those of you who don't know, that's what Concerta is. I was taking, and it was a stimulant. And there is extended release and short release too. There's a 6 hour long one, and a 12 hour long one. I took the 12 hour long one, which is a lot longer. In the end of the day, um, as long as you know what you're working with, whether in the chemicals, create those adaptive skills. If there's loss of appetite, make sure those nutrients are coming back to you, and study what you're putting in your body, and moderation is key.
yes. And if you are not eating because you have that loss of appetite, which happens to a lot of people on stimulants, creating a schedule where you are eating um,
Hmm.
and sticking to it to make sure that you have the nutrients that you had mentioned. Because for people who are taking medication and aren't eating, then of course that's going to impact your focus even more.
Hmm.
Not
Hmm.
eating and you're taking the medication. So we need the right nutrients in our body, including vitamins,
Hmm.
even in the capsule form, to increase our ability to focus. So the vitamin D's, the vitamin B's. And so we've spoken about this in other episodes,
Yep.
but
Yep.
yes, it's so important to monitor the medication and monitor your behavior and monitoring your interactions as you start your medication. But just on the complete flip side, some people take ADHD medication to control their binge eating. And
Hmm.
it also can be a side effect of the medication. So people with ADHD so often do have binge eating.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to call it a disorder, just disordered eatings.
Yes.
So the ADHD medication can actually regulate the binge eating symptoms that people experience when they are not on the medication as well.
100%. 100%.
So my advice to everyone who's listening, if you're thinking about taking medication, of course, consult your doctor or someone you trust who is experienced with ADHD,
Yes.
and consider the goal behind why you're doing it. And you're going to get mixed opinions out there if you should do behavioral type approach first, or if you should do medication first, or you should do both.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you're going to be the decision maker as an adult, what you think is best, but make sure you're in the right hands also when being treated.